Hey guys, this is Richie from Things Tech, where we talk all things tech, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the Moto G4. Stick around. Motorola's history, like my shirt, has been both checkered and marred in very questionable liquids. From being famous for making the also dreaded Motorola Razr phones, to making also more Motorola Razr phones for Droid, which were not as famous, to being purchased by Google and making pretty good phones, then being gutted by Google and sold to Lenovo. They've had quite a rough history, but they have some pretty good phones, like this one here. The Moto G4, or 4th generation, is Motorola's 4th entry into the field of budget-friendly smartphones. The body, although being made of plastic, still feels pretty sturdy and has very little weight to it, so it doesn't feel cheap. The back of the phone has a very nice textured feel to it, and the Motorola logo indented in the back is also a nice touch, even though Lenovo seems to be phasing out the Motorola branding. On the right hand side of the phone, you have the power button and the volume rocker, which is quite strange to me because in most other phones you'd find the volume rocker on the other side away from the power button, but it's no big deal really. On the underside of the phone, you'll find the micro USB connector for charging or USB OTG. And on the top lastly, you'll have your 3.5mm jack for your headphones. You should also be aware that the phone's only speaker grill can be found at the top of the phone next to the front-facing camera. To remove the backplate, simply put your finger underneath the groove next to the USB connector and pull it off. You'll notice once doing that despite the way it feels, its build quality is very cheap and flimsy. But hey, that shouldn't surprise you considering that it's a budget phone. The phone has a 3000 mAh lithium-ion battery, although it seems to be non-removable, so you won't be able to replace it. Here you'll also find a micro SD card slot that supports up to 256 gigs of RAM and a micro SIM slot. Reinstalling the backplate, you'll need to ensure that the camera fits right in its hole and press on each side of the phone to ensure that the clips snap back into place. The display on this device is a 5.5-inch IPS LCD touchscreen with a resolution of 1080p and a pixel density of 401 ppi, being protected by Corning Wear Gorilla Glass 3. Being released this year, this device has Android 6.0 Marshmallow but is capable of being upgraded to Nougat, which has been released. Using the phone feels about average and has nothing gimmicky about it, which is pretty nice. The screen on time is rated at 72 hours, but let's be real, with average use you get about 20 hours or so. For photos, this phone has a 5-megapixel front-facing camera with Ultra HDR, accompanying a 13-megapixel camera featuring dual LED flash and a shutter speed of 1/5 of a second. Although the sensor is quite small, the back-facing camera is capable of taking full HD photos and videos at 1080p 30 frames per second with an ISO range of 100 to 3200. As expected, images look about average with very light saturation, and the autofocus tends to be a bit on the slow side on videos, especially when you're zooming in. Going under the hood, this device packs a powerful punch with an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 617, rocking an Adreno 405 GPU. It also has 2 gigs of RAM, which is not that much by current standards, seeing as how most phones are rocking 3 to 4 gigs of RAM. But keep in mind it's not a flagship phone. Regardless, it's not sluggish at all and is able to play most of the current games with a fairly decent frame rate. In terms of storage, there's a 16 and a 32 gigabyte version of this phone in particular, but this model that I'm showing you guys is a 16 gigabyte model because, it has a micro SD card slot. I wouldn't really need more. Well, now that it's getting late in the day, guys, I want to compare this phone to my other phone, the OnePlus One. As you guys can both see, they have the same screen size and they're both quite snappy, being able to open the browser relatively at the same time. Now, the OnePlus One might have more RAM, but you have to keep in mind that it's DDR3 RAM, and it has a quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor which was released about 3 years ago. So I guess you could say that the Moto G is on par with a flagship phone of yesteryear.
Now, one thing you guys would notice just by looking at this video is that the OLED display on the OnePlus One is a lot brighter than the IPS display on the Moto G4. The G4's display seems a bit warmer, which is okay in low light situations, but in direct sunlight, you're not going to be able to see the screen properly. So if you're using this phone outdoors, be expected to turn the brightness up as much as possible. Now, another thing that I have to bring up, even though I'd rather not because it seems a bit picky, and the Moto G4 is a budget phone, is that it's lacking the capacitive touch buttons. Now, the OnePlus One has capacitive touch integrated despite the low backlight, but the G4 however relies on the OS to give you those buttons. Again, that might seem trivial, but if the OS crashes, that means that the buttons will become non-responsive. On the bright side, however, that rarely ever happens.
Now, the Moto G is not the best phone you can get from Motorola. It's not a flagship phone, but it is of good quality. It has a very decent operating system, pretty good specs, and it's affordable. As a matter of fact, this model I got here from Amazon during the Prime Day sale for about $130. So if you're looking for a phone that is below $200, then this is definitely right up your alley. And it's a new phone too, it came out this year. Well, that's all the time I have for today's video, guys. If you like this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, and share with your friends and help this channel grow. Growing like trees, growing, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching again, and peace.